Indeed for joining us tonight in what is another episode of our Epic podcast. Tonight we are in good company with former England manager Steve McClaren joining us tonight, and just speaking to him there, he's in good form and very much looking forward to the next 45 minutes as are we. Um, Please, just want to encourage us again, folks, to really ping in your questions to Steve tonight. As always, we will do our utmost to try and get through as many as we can in the 45 minutes. Also, just want to say a big thank you to everyone who has texted me personally over the last 10 days regards when we kicked off the podcast. As I said, people are asking me the longevity of it. Is it going to be a long-term thing? The answer to that is we just don't know. Obviously we have a lot of exciting guests coming in over the next number of weeks, and we just run with it and see where we go. But certainly thank you to you folk. You seem to be enjoying it, and we'll continue to try and engage as best we can, and ultimately read out whatever comes our way. But look, thank you for your encouragement. It is greatly appreciated, and thank you for that. Tonight as well, I just want to take this opportunity, as always, and thank the guys in the Longest 40 for broadcasting this. We are thankful for them, we are grateful for them, and yet again, we continue to build our long-standing relationships with the folks. So, as I said, Steve will be joining us very shortly. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and if you just want to, in fact, here we go. Mr. McClaren, how are you?
Hey, I'm very good, despite there being a crazy world at the moment and not knowing the future. We're in good spirits, and I think I'm at that good age where kids have left home. I've got no homeschooling, and me and the wife can enjoy the countryside here. And at the end of this, I'm going to be as fit as I've ever been in my life, I think.
Fantastic, Steve. No, certainly it's been challenging times for everyone over the last number of weeks and months, and I think puts everything in perspective, no doubt about it. Can I just also urge you, folks watching tonight, you'll see a link for Sports Academy out in Georgia in Africa, and if you feel, please bounce on there, find out about the charity, and if you feel an eagerness to donate to that, it's for unprivileged kids out in Africa at the minute who very little education, which ultimately by not going to school suffer from actually receiving meals. And the guys, actually a Northern Ireland based charity, guys out there, so please, due to the lack of funding at the minute, it's difficult to obviously allow this to happen. So please, if you can bounce on there, I know the guys would be greatly appreciated. Any sort of donation would be greatly received. So thank you so much indeed. Steve, pleasure having you on tonight. Incredible career you've had, and I do appreciate you giving up your time tonight. Started off as a player at Oxford, Steve, over 300 games in the Football League. As a player, Steve, was it always something that you had an eagerness and a hunger to one day go into being a coach and ultimately a manager?
No, not really. I think about, 1920, I got a bad injury in my back, which hampered me. By 25, 26, I had a year out of the game and very nearly packed it in. Took the insurance money and looked for something else to do. Business wise, I always looked at businesses, did a bit of more education. But once I got back playing and managed to get back playing, you only think about playing when you're a player, you only think about playing. You don't think about the future. You think it's never going to end. 25, 26 was a bit of a wake up call for me. But still, I plan to be playing and playing as much as I could for as long as I could. And then unfortunately, I took my badges as a player. Not really a great interest, just focused and wanted to be a footballer, a player. But about 30, 31, whilst at Oxford, I got a bad knee injury. And while I was out, Brian Horton, who was the manager, said, look, the youth team, the reserves at the present moment, the coach has moved up to the first team. Whilst you're in rehab, would you take the boys on a Saturday morning and Tuesday for the reserve games, and until you get fit again? And my first game, I took M25, driving around the M25. I remember kids in the back going to Crystal Palace and getting a great buzz from the game. Coaching the players, halftime, team talks, won the game 2-1, and I got a real buzz from that. And that's when all light bulb went off in me, and I said, "That's I found my passion. I found what I want to do." After I finished playing, I got fit again, but did my coaching badges a little bit more. Took it serious. Took the youth team. Took the reserves. Every Saturday, Tuesday, I had a game. Took charge of the apprentices as they were then, and got a real buzz out of it. And 4 or 5 years at Oxford, and I became player coach. And I thought I was an average player during my career at Hull, Derby, Bristol, finished at Oxford. I seemed to become a better player when I became a coach. Yeah, it's strange.
Joining in the phase, were you?
Yeah, joining in the boxes, in the five-a-sides, but also whilst I was youth reserves player coach, I played in the reserves, and occasionally when they had injuries, Brian Horton put me in the first team of Oxford. So I really did become, through coaching, a better player, and that culminated. In fact, I carried that on at Derby and Manchester United, and ended up I'm playing five-a-sides and in boxes with David Beckham, Andy Cole, Dwight York, Giggsy Scholes, Roy Keane, and all them, and I'm playing football. I always kept it two touch because I couldn't run and they could run past me. I kept it two touch, so it kept me in the game. And I remember the gaffer once said, "Oh, he said, I bet you can't believe it, can you? You're actually playing with the likes of these players." And you're right, it was a fairy tale. But I held my own in that. They probably won't say I did, but I really enjoyed my football, and that was through becoming a coach.
Yeah. Because ultimately, I know you touched on Manchester United there, and we'll come to that in quite a bit. But before you went to Manchester United, you had an incredibly successful time as a coach to the late Jim Smith, and which ultimately seen Derby get to the promised land, the Premiership, and like that must have been an incredible experience too. And learning that, and ultimately being a massive part, which was ultimately, Steve, a very, very good Derby County side.
It was a great team. It was a
Yeah.
great. I remember Jim joining. He was 58 years old, and everyone's saying he's over the top and finished. And Jim was incredible. We lost the first 8 games. We didn't win a game, I think, for 8 games, and everybody was calling for Jim's head. We made a couple of signings, and that's what he was very good at: recruitment, signing mavericks, shall we say, players who independent minded, foreigners, a little bit different, but had that great quality. And that's what he brought into Derby. We brought 1 or 2 in, Stimac, Asanovic. We never lost for 22 games, went top of the league, and got through in second place, established in the Premier League. And established, he played a 3-5-2, 3-5-1, and 3-5-1. And the quality of the players that he brought in made us a very, very exciting team. We had some great wins at Old Trafford, at Anfield. And I always remember them wins. I always remember the games at Pride Park. And Jim, for his sheer experience, exuberance, and sheer brutal honesty, which is something that, maybe I wouldn't say is lacking in the game at the present moment, but back then it was about brutal honesty. It was about telling, yelling, not about selling. And Jim did that. But the point was, he used to kill the players, but the players loved him. And it was that brutal honesty. At least you know where you stood with him. And for 4 or 5 years, it was an unbelievable education, going from a very young, inexperienced, immature coach to one when I left was mature and ready for the next stage.
Yeah. And ultimately at that stage, Steve, in your career, obviously you're building your CV, your pedigree's rising, your stock's rising. Which ultimately, by the time you left Derby to go to Manchester United, you were one of the most respected coaches in Europe. You know what I mean? Your name was out there, and obviously the fact that Manchester United come calling, that must have been an incredible move for your career. And when you go to Manchester United, did Steve McClaren the person have to change? You're mentioning names there. You're in the boxes with Keno and Giggs and all those guys. Going into you're arriving at the cliff. How is that your first day arriving there? Or you just continually believing in what you're doing is right, or did you as a person have to change to adapt into that environment?
Brian, I'm getting cold sweats thinking about that first day. walking into to Old Trafford and getting introduced. And I always remember doing it and joining, talking on the Thursday, sorting the contract, Friday press conference, Friday night joining the team, Saturday playing at Forest. We win 8-1. We win 8-1. I'm sat in the first time in the dugout, just met the players, 8-1. And I'm thinking on Monday morning, what the hell do I coach this team? I stuck with the one goal and coached them on clean sheets and defending better because I couldn't teach them how to play. Couldn't teach them how to score. It was just throw the ball, score goals. The other side of the game we worked on. And that first day was, well, the first 5 months from January until the end when we lifted the European Cup and completed the treble. I didn't have a day off. I didn't sleep at night. I was awake 2 or 3 o'clock planning the next session, next day, just working, so making sure everything was right. Because if it wasn't, or that dressing room, then players would kill you. If a disc was out of place, if a cone wasn't right, if the exercise wasn't good, they used to kill me. They everything had to be right. So I didn't sleep. I didn't have a holiday. Didn't have a day off for
Yeah,
5
that's
months.
absolutely incredible, Steve. Incredible.
Yeah, it killed me
Okay.
for the first 5 months. I couldn't wait to get a holiday at the end of that. And after winning the treble, the gaffer's there saying we're in at 9 o'clock the next day. Coffee, tea, bacon butties down at the cliff in the canteen, meeting with the staff, throw your medals in the drawer. What we're going to do next year. I thought, I just need a holiday, and that was the beauty of him. That's why he was so successful over 27
Yeah.
years. Just win one thing, medal in the drawer. What we're going to do next year.
Yeah. And we'll break away here, Steve, just a wee second. Andrea's texting, and we'll come to it now. What was it like working under Sir Alex? But, even the fact you commented there, if a cone was out of place, you know what I mean? And like so many, we all love the game. And obviously, that's why we're just so blessed to have you on tonight, because you've reached the, you know what I mean, the level that you've been at. And, to be in the jobs that you have, Steve, to be England managers, not many do that. So, the experience that you must have, and it's just absolutely a testimony to what the ability that you have. But Sir Alex, obviously, what was he like to work for? What was he like to work under? Was he relentless every day? And what would you have said that you picked up most about Sir Alex to set you on your journey as a manager?
I think the biggest thing was the first day going into his office Monday morning and really saying, okay, first, what do you want me to coach? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, what do you want me to do with the team? Do anything specific or anything like that? He said, what did you do at Derby? I said, well, and before I could get the answer out, he said, whatever you did at Derby, that's why you're here. I brought you here to coach. Now go out there and coach. And that was it. That was the only time he ever told me, or didn't he actually tell me, but he told me, just get out there and coach. And so, not a free rein as such. He always wanted to know what I was doing, what was that. I always came and joined in and always was on the sidelines and always watched. But I think that's the biggest thing, that working with Sir Alex was, yes, work ethic. He was up meetings at 6 o'clock, before. It was incredible. Gym at 7, never left. If he did leave and go in the afternoon, he was always going to a social event for Manchester United. His work ethic was unbelievable. Again, it's the trust. I think that was the key thing that I learned. He trusted me to do the job. So he brought me in. He didn't coach me. He didn't say what I had to do. He didn't tell me. He didn't micromanage me. Never said, well done, and never really pulled me up on. He just let me get on and do the job. And that's what he did with all the staff. And he trusted his players. Trust was the key to everything. He trusted and respected everybody in there. And if you're in there, you were part of the family. And when I go back to the third and most important thing, he was brutally honest with his players. And, not too much praise. And certainly if they were out of line, weren't doing the job, weren't behaving in the right pool, then down on like a ton of bricks. And the hairdryer was out. Not that it was out many times, because he got total control at that stage, total control of the players, of the board, of the supporters. He was Mr. Manchester United. And what he did well, he carried that well with his charisma and his experience and his personality. So he only had to growl and people moved, jumped, did their job. And that was the key thing for me, that the work ethic, yes, trust, brutal honesty. Again, a little bit like Jim Smith, and players knew where they stood and staff knew where they stood. And it was fantastic, nearly 3 years working with him. And I learned so much. But I always remember the day I left him, I said, give me any advice. He says, yeah, don't try and be anybody else. Don't try and be me. Just be yourself. And I've tried to take that on board wherever I've gone.
Yeah, you've done well, to be fair, since you moved on. Steve, I'll just take this. Thomas text in. He says, obviously you bounced in as a coach, first of all, before you stepped into management. For the modern day manager now, do you think it's maybe best having that experience going in as a 2 before you become a 1, or there's so many players now just they retire, they get their badges, and before you know it, they're in the dugout as a manager? What would your advice be to the modern day manager? Possibly get a bit of experience first, or dive right in?
Look, I think it's totally different, and management can be different, and it's changed a hell of a lot even from 20 years ago when I first started. And I wasn't in a fortunate position where I was a famous player and a big player and had played in big games and I was an international player, and therefore even if I'd have done my badges, come out of football, people would have looked at me as if, oh yeah, management material there. I had to go through the long way, serve my apprenticeship, because I was an unknown player. And when I went to Derby, even Manchester United, I was an unknown coach. So in my position, yes, I had to get the experience. I had to learn. I had to be a sponge. I had to work, get that work ethic, get that knowledge, get that experience and credibility and respect through being a number 2. Now, I fully understand, the likes of Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard making that jump into management, as long as you can split that. But I was always a coach first, and then I became a manager. And the other way around, being a manager first, I think if you've got the personality, charisma, and you've got that experience and credentials, I think you can carry it off. But you need good coaches around you, and you need a good philosophy, and you need to be intelligent. And to do that as a player coming out now, they're the things that you need. But you still need experience on the field. You still need a philosophy and people around you to coach. You're only as good, people say, as your players, which is right, but you're also only as good as the staff around you.
Yeah, true. We'll take this one tonight. John, thanks for texting tonight. Steve, who was the most talented young player you've seen who maybe quite didn't fulfill his talent?
Oh, that's a good question. And, it's no, I don't know many that have been there that have done that. The only ones maybe young players coming through at Manchester United, young players coming through at Middlesbrough, young players coming through at Derby. No, I think they've all reached their potential in terms of when I've worked with them, the clubs that they've had to kind of fulfill their talent. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it in the game. And there are lots and lots of players who, between the ages of, I would say, 16 and 21, but especially 18 and 21, talented young players have fallen by the wayside because of adversity and not being able to deal with adversity. 1 week playing in the first team and the next week back in with the youth team, and not being able to handle that and not coming back and getting back and fighting and having I've always seen young players coming through that stage, and once they've gone past 21 and gone through adversity and fulfilled their talent, they've always gone to fulfill it and be good players. I can name a hell of a lot between the ages of 18 and 21 who have failed through, 1, injuries, yes, 2, lifestyle, because most players, do they want to play football or just be a footballer? And a lot of young players just want to be a footballer, not an actual player, top player. And that can do. And then, not dealing with adversity and not accepting the knocks and not being tough enough to get through that 18 to 21 stage and become top players. And some players have had to drop out the league before they come back. And you know, Vardy's a great example of that. You know, the toughness he must have to go through what he went through and to get back to the top. Hats off and compliments to Vardy for that.
Yeah. I think as well too, Steve, as well, you know, you see the amount of talent now coming through the lower leagues and even from the, you know, League One right up and going and making a successful heck of a career out of it. You know, in terms of players now, you touched on something there in terms of players have to really want it. But a few guys on over the last 10 days from we've started these, and you know, players maybe want to be a footballer, but in your time, have you seen a lot of that where the sacrifices that need to be made, where the likes of Lampards and your Gerrards and your Rio Ferdinands that have done that, there's also quite a high percentage of players that haven't and ultimately have tailed off?
Oh, without a doubt. I always say, you know, I mean, I've been very, very fortunate, very lucky in my career to, you know, to have developed and worked at Manchester United, which was the top, and worked for England, which top in the UK. So foreign players, UK players, top, and they are the top 5%. They are totally driven. They are winners. They want everything right. You know, people say that, you know, they must be really tough to coach. No, they're the easiest people to coach. As long as you give them the top quality coaching, the top sessions, top advice. You got the top manager, which they had. Cordia, that's all they wanted. They wanted to be the best, and they were dedicated, professional. And if they weren't, they were out the club. So I've been fortunate to have worked with that top 5%. And also, as I was coming up, and also after coming back from abroad and back to coming down, and the other 95%, I've worked with them as well. And so I know the difference, and I know what it takes. And I think that's been the key for me. If you want to be a top player, you have to do this. And I remember pulling one player at Derby, and it's, you want to be a top player, you can be a top player. You can be number one. You can, instead of 20 grand a week, you could be earning 50 grand a week. These are the 5 things you have to do, of which one of them was lifestyle, and the other one was eating burgers, and one was lifestyle, don't go out on a weekend with your mates. And he came back and he said, I want to be average. I can't give up my burgers, and I can't give up my partying with my mates at the weekend. And unfortunately, that happens, and that's what happens to the 95%. If you're in the top 5%, they are easy to manage, easy to coach.
Yeah. Andy, thanks for your text tonight. Steve, do you think your appointment as England coach affected results and focus towards the end of your season with Middlesbrough, especially the final vis-a-vis?
No, we were running on empty by the time we reached the final against Sevilla. We were running on empty. I remember the last 2-3 weeks of the season, and you know, people, Middlesbrough fans will well remember the quarter-final, the semi-final. I mean, we always talk about emotional highs, and after emotional highs, winning big games, it's very difficult to lift the players again for the next game and the next game and to gain momentum. The players did it in the quarter-final against Basel. Unbelievable. 2 weeks later, they did it again against Steaua Bucharest. And then 2 weeks later, even 5 days later, we had a FA Cup semi-final against West Ham. We lost in the last minute 1-0. So we had emotional highs, emotional dips, a lot of injuries. All the players in the squad played a lot of games, over 70 games in that season. I had to, and the chairman wanted it from the beginning of the time that I spent there. He said, I want a team full of players, local players from in the Middlesbrough area. And we put 10 out of the 11 from the Middlesbrough area out in the last Premier League game against Fulham. We lost 1-0, I remember, but it was a proud moment for myself and Steve that we achieved that, of nearly from the academy getting a first team out in a Premier League game. And we were resting players. And by the time we reached the final, I knew we had 1 or 2, 3 players, maybe Southgate being one, who, you know, they were carrying injuries, carrying niggles, and it was just one game too many for us, unfortunately. It was a great run, it was a great journey, and it was a disappointing end.
Yeah, and ultimately, Steve, we'll go on to the England situation when you were there at your time. But before we go there, obviously you go to Holland, you win a league title. You know what I mean? You how you progress in Middlesbrough, League Cup final, UEFA Cup. You know whenever you go into a club, you make changes. You enhance the football club. And ultimately when you go into an England international setup, and I know you were there, for a period of time as a coach, etc., and then obviously you get your hands on the job. Whenever you go in there, can you look back in your time as England manager now and reflect and have any sort of clarity with the players that you had at your disposal, and some of those players were, in their pump. Why maybe things just didn't happen. Was it potentially the rivalry between, your Chelsea's, your Liverpool, United fighting for premierships, or what? Are you any sort of clarity in terms of why might it just didn't happen?
Yeah, I think that, I think it's a great point you make, Brian, that, yeah, you're absolutely right. When I was working with Sven and before, Manchester United were dominant, and the players, where they were the nucleus, they were really dominant. By the time I came around to taking the job, Chelsea had kind of taken over. Manchester United, some of the players were going out. David Beckham was going to America to go and play, and there was a lot of changes. And I felt Chelsea was the way to go. John Terry as captain and trying to start all over again, really. But I think the key thing was my sheer inexperience of the job. Yes, I've seen it, and this is, you can do all the coaching badges in the world, management courses, leadership courses, go with the SAS, you do what you want. It doesn't prepare you for management as a number two, and I was a number two with England. And even that didn't really prepare me for being in the job, and I was too experienced. What I know now to go in, I would be totally, totally different and make totally, totally different decisions than I did at that present time, purely on my lack of experience and my understanding of, and I wasn't in management long enough to understand the enormous jump in terms of spotlight media, big players, transition period, getting through that, and having the experience of actually dealing with adversity, getting through it, dealing with the media, getting through it. The one thing I thought I learned after about, I would say, 12 months, maybe 14 months, and then it suddenly clicked with me. And then I think we won 3 games on the bounce, which put us into a situation where we had to go to we had to play Croatia, get a draw, and we would qualify. And then that would be, you have to get over what I call a hump. And I didn't get over the hump. If I'd got over the hump, I maybe would have gone on again. But I didn't get over that hump. I was 1 game away from that. And so, yeah, the first 12 months were, wow, if you can imagine, it was still scrambled in my head now, and really didn't coming out of that until about 12, 14 months after, when I thought, right, this is what I'm going to do. I've got to set my philosophy this way. This is how we're going to do it. And people are going to have to like it or lump it. And from then, we started to make progress, but not enough. And that 1 game obviously cost me the job.
Yeah, Steve, the one thing you mentioned earlier on there was obviously the brutal honesty of Fergie and how that obviously was a massive, massive factor in how he managed. The one thing that's shining out to me tonight with you is your brutal honesty, Steve, and testimony to you for that. Darren has texted in tonight. He said, Darren, thanks for your text. He says, how do you handle the big personalities in football and prima donnas? And just before I lead on to that, obviously, making big decisions in management is hard, but ultimately that's what needs to happen. Having worked with Beckham at Manchester United, obviously you left him out of a squad at England, etc., and then you brought him back in. But was that difficult? Having, I'm sure, built up quite a relationship with David Beckham, and ultimately, what was your thinking to then bring him back into the squad again?
He'd moved to America, and the distance was too far to keep an eye on him. It was a lesser league. Would he have the fitness? Would he have the momentum, the travel? You're only there for 2 or 3 days, then you have to play. Is that going to affect the time difference? And I just felt we needed a new start, and and that was, one decision that I must say that I've no regrets for. I talked to David about that, and also no regrets for bringing him back. He proved that he could handle that, and what we lacked in my time, and that's what I discovered after about 12 months. What we lacked in there was if we're missing Rooney was injured sometimes, Lampard, Gerrard, Michael Owens, people who make a difference. David Beckham made a difference, and David Beckham could be on the field for the last 10 minutes of the game. You get a free kick, and he would make the difference. You get a corner, he would make the difference in terms of delivery. He would win your football matches. And we missed that in the 12 months. We missed that. And I always remember bringing him back for Estonia, and I think it was Estonia, and we were playing away, and we were winning 1-0, I think, and he gets a ball 35 yards from goal, wide on the right. He delivers an unbelievable, I still see it now in my head, delivered an unbelievable one of them curling crosses to Peter Crouch. Peter Crouch, simple, it was a great header, to be fair, nodded it back in. And I remember saying to Steve Ram, the assistant, so we've missed that quality. That's what we've missed. And I couldn't play the full game sometimes, but he came on and affected it. And also his personality. And what a great person, what a great character, what a great professional, to actually turn around and say, yeah, if England need me, yeah, I'm ready. And he was ready. And, I always remember, that half-time crucial against Croatia, and 2-0 down and having to make changes, and bringing David on was one, which was what a person to bring on. And his performance was incredible. So much so that we got back to 2-2. And I thought, that's, people say, and any good half times you've had? I said, I think that was one of my best half times in terms of what I said and the changes that I made. We were 2-0 down, stay in the game, get the next goal, we'll get the result. We got the next goal, we were 2-2. And then it was about decision making in the last 20 minutes, which can also win and lose your games, which it did.
Mm-hmm. Tom is texting in tonight. Tom, thanks a million. Going back to your days at Forest, Steve, as a Forest supporter, were you disappointed with the way things happened at the City Ground during your stay in 2011? Thank you, Tom, for that.
Bitterly. What a great club. Unbelievable. You walk into that football club, history, tradition, European Cups, Brian Clough, but just the ground, it just oozes and smells of history and tradition. Yes, they had a new training ground, but it just oozed that quality. They needed to get back into that first division, and unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. And that was as much my fault as other people's, without a shadow of a doubt. And it was something that maybe, yeah. Do I regret joining? I think what happened was I was just about to join another club, and that fell down on the last minute. I was on a train journey up to sign for a Premier League club, and it fell down in the last minute, and that really affected me. And I think on the rebound, I took the job when possibly I shouldn't have done. So I was never comfortable in there, if that makes sense. And I thought at a certain period of that time, regrettably, it was better for Nottingham Forest as a football club, and for me also as a person and a football manager, for us to part ways and them to move on, and also for me to do that.
Yeah, okay. We'll take this just a quick one before we bounce on to Jake Evans' question. Obviously, Steve, you've managed, some fantastic players and high levels. For you, who is the greatest player that you've ever coached and certainly managed? David Dawson texted in tonight. Thanks for that, Dave.
I think, yeah, Brian, it's a great question. So many, so many that have affected my career at times, delivered and worked with. But I think I go on two people really. One in terms of not so much talent, not so much, a great football player, but an unbelievable influence off the field and on the field. And Roy Keane, unbelievable. And I went to Manchester and I thought, Roy, he was a good player. He was a good player. Wow. I looked at him in training. He was a great player. He never gave the ball away. We used to play 11 aside in rooms like my little study here, and he never gave the ball away. He was unbelievable. But his drive, his captaincy, the winning mentality, the way he drove them on, the way the team accepted, the way it's just aura. That semi-final against Juventus probably sums him up entirely. He took the game by the scruff of the neck, and only great players can do that. I've seen other players do it. Beckham did it. Greece, England against Greece to go through to the World Cup, free kick, last minute bomb, and we were losing the game, and he just by the scruff of it, he just took hold of the game and got us through, and got booked, and knew he was not going to play in the final, but delivered a performance like that. Unselfishness, a team player, just to get the team through. He kind of got through that semi-final, and that was his final. And he didn't want to know about the rest. He didn't want to know about the game. He didn't want to know about the final. He'd done his job. He'd got the players there, and he didn't want to take any praise or glory in the final. He's an incredible personality and player on the field. And then for talent, pure talent, and maybe, I think, people talk about Xavi and Iniesta for Barcelona. There was no one better than Paul Scholes at Manchester United. No better player. What I used to see day in, day out on Saturdays at times was breathtaking. He had so much ability, so much talent, that I also think he maybe could have taken that a lot further and been of the stature of Iniesta, Xavi for Barcelona, because he was playing in a team like that, and he for me, he had everything and could do everything on a football field that anybody else can do.
Fascinating, Steve. Absolutely fascinating. Just listen to you there with Keane and Scholes. Jake Evan, thank you tonight. Hi, Steve. As one of the rare examples of an English manager working in the continent, would you recommend other young managers to take similar strides off and work abroad to gain an edge? Thank you, Jake.
It's a good one, because we've been talking about this for a long time. We knew when I was at Derby, foreign players were coming in, and I said, eventually, you know what's going to follow? Foreign managers. And that's what followed, foreign managers. And they've taken over. And we haven't got a good reputation, English coaches in Europe or around the world. And that's got to change, because there are some excellent, very, very good coaches. Now, when I was first managing, First Division, Premier League, wasn't really the best league in the world. La Liga was, even Italy was the best. And it's only since the Premier League and its dominance that I would say to any young coach, you've got to make it in England first. You've got to make it in England first, because this is where the top football is, top players are, top managers are. This is where you've got to work. And if you can make it in England, then great. But some people won't get the opportunity, like Frank, Stevie G. Some people like myself, trying to make it, and now they're all in academies and some are coming through. Maybe they will have to look abroad. I was forced to go abroad because I couldn't get a job in England after failing in the England job. I could not get a job to save my life. So I had to go abroad. I was so lucky to go to Holland. I turned it down the first time. 2 weeks later, I went back and said, is it still there? And they went, yeah. And I went, I'll take it. This is the only job that anyone would give me at that present time. It was a good team. I took it, and the rest is history. But
yeah, I'll just come in there, Steve. But isn't that incredible too, though? What you did, you at Manchester United, you went obviously to Middlesbrough, and then obviously become the England manager. And effectively, the effect of what happened at England all of a sudden just almost killed any potential opportunity of someone taking a chance on you. It's a massive effect that must have, and even to what you've been used to, where potentially you were never short of offers, and all of a sudden you can't get a job. And in that situation, being in the agency world myself, it's tough, it's difficult. I get that, but was that maybe that there were certain jobs that you didn't want to take, or was that simply that there was no jobs?
No, there was no jobs. There was, as I said before, when I joined Forest, there was one I was going to Premier League, and in the morning that it leaked out, what they called it, these message boards on fans forums and things.
Mm-hmm.
Not McClaren. Oh, we've heard what rumor of McClaren.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, we won't buy our season. We won't do this. What? And yeah, it was virile. It was, oh my God, and the club changed their mind in the last minute, and I got other interviews, but didn't get the job. People underneath were, I felt were getting. So it was the only job that was on offer that I could
Mm-hmm.
take, and I was fortunate that it was such a good team at the time, and I took over, and what happened.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you went out, you won a league, and you know what I mean. Ultimately, the CV was enhanced from that. So, well done on that, Steve. We'll take this one, Andrew Sweetlove. Thanks for texting tonight. What advice would you give young players starting their career from a coaching and managerial perspective, Steve?
Oh gosh, gain the knowledge, be passionate, work ethic, be different, find something unique. USP, unique selling point that they've got. When I first started, this innovation was the word that was associated with me. You've got to get it, whether it's philosophy, whether it's build up, possession, play. You play like Guardiola, or you press gig and press like Klopp. You've got to have some kind of USP, but work ethic is important. I think learning a language is important now, showing that intelligence, and I think emotional control. I think it's all changing. It's all communication, relationships now. It's more selling than it is when I first started yelling, do this, do this, do this, as you must know. And I think the best thing that I've done over the last few years, most definitely, in fact, all my career, because I've worked with sports psychologists, is to know yourself, is to really, really know yourself, and really know if you're a youth team coach, if you're a first team coach, if you're a dress coach, that you can deal with the big players in the dressing room. Are you an assistant manager? Are you a number two? Or are you a number one? And I think when you look at yourself and you know yourself, and you go to some of these psychometric tests that you can get now, that looks at your personality, but also you know yourself. Can you be a number one? Yeah, I think you've got to know yourself so well. Know your strengths and your weaknesses, and know what you got to work at, and know what you got to cover with people around you. And having that personality, charisma, and it doesn't have to be yell and. It has to be more sell, more collaboration in dressing rooms now. You have to be a different kind. I think a great example of that is probably Gareth Southgate, in terms of the England manager, where he finished playing straight into coaching, managing, and it was very, very difficult. Didn't have a real philosophy to go on to. Had to come out of the game, work with young players in the FA, develop that kind of personality, which he always had, by the way, the leader always. And he's taken that on board and been the perfect coach to coach at under 21 level, and then step up with the same players. So that's an advantage. into modern day management, which is totally different. I remember going to St George's Park, watching a coaching demonstration. Gareth Southgate, Stevie Holland. Gareth was late. Stevie Holland had to he took the session. He was brilliant, very, very good. And Gareth came and spoke after, and he said, that's modern leadership. I'm there at the front doing this, and he's behind doing all the work. And I thought, I'm not saying, Jim Smith was a little bit, left me to do the coaching and the work. Sir Alex was the same, left me to do the coaching and the work. Sven was the same, left me to do the coaching and the work. And they were the front, they were right in front of the media and leaders. And I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, but ultimately, Steve, you know what I mean? Obviously, being able to go in and do the sessions and having that autonomy by the manager, ultimately, I guess that's where you build the respect of the players and the trust. And ultimately, when the sessions are the tempo's incredible and the players are growing into what you're looking to do, ultimately, that's where you do gain the respect and ultimately grow then to whenever you did go into management.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. People say, I was, as a coach, very, very organised, very enthusiastic, different ideas. And I was just a little bit different, introducing psychology to Manchester United, pro zone analysis. And I was always looking for that kind of thing. But I always had that burning ambition to be a number one. I remember Sir Alex saying, time to go. I'm going to retire and so go. It's time for you to test the waters, and that was a huge, huge step for me, because if Sir Alex hadn't have been retiring the next season, eventually he turned around and changed his mind. If he hadn't, I'd have stayed at Manchester United and worked there the rest of my life. It was such an unbelievable club.
Yeah. We'll take this here, Steve. Just we'll not keep you too long, and say thank you so much for your time tonight. Kath McStay has texted in from your time in Newcastle. Please give Steve a shout for me, please. When he managed Newcastle United, I spoke regularly to him. He was a good, honest family man with a passion for the club. So that's Kath McStay. So thank you, Kath, for texting in. It's very, very kind of you. Just on your time at Newcastle, obviously we have a few Newcastle fans texting in tonight, Steve. And Luke O'Doherty is texting to say, when you were at Newcastle manager, what and how would you describe your relationship with obviously Mike Ashley? Obviously, there's a possible takeover going to happen at St James's, and looks as if it may be forced through over the next few weeks. But what was your relationship, Steve, like with Mike Ashley when you were there?
I don't think you actually. You don't actually have a relationship with Mike Ashley, and that's how he wants it. That's how he runs his businesses. That's how he runs his football club, and you've got to respect that. So he had people below him who did the work and were expected to do his work how he wanted it. I met him for, I think, 20 minutes before the first game against Southampton, and I think I said Happy New Year at the game at Watford. And they were the only words and relationship communication that I had with Mike Ashley. Everything else went through other people within the football club. So it was difficult to get that close relationship. It was a difficult club at that time to manage. And again, I thought I had all the experience, and it's something you don't get at a football club, is time. It's something you don't get, and that club needed time to turn around, and I knew after 6 weeks, 10 weeks in the dressing room, it needed changing around, and that might have taken a year, 2 years. Unfortunately, I wasn't given that time, and that's what happens in football. You've still got to win in the short term and plan for the long term. That's always been the motto and always will be. And unfortunately, I ran out of time.
Mm-hmm. Steve, obviously, life now for Steve McClaren. Do you still have the hunger and the passion and desire to get back into a job, or do you maybe want to get involved in football in another capacity, or are you still looking to be a manager again?
I take inspiration from 2 managers that I worked for, and 3, and also You know, Jim was 58 when he took over at Derby. He had he says, 7 of my best years in football from 58 to 65. Sir Alex was 58, 57 when he was going to retire. Changed his mind, turned around and had an unbelievable successful spell in his 60s right the way through. Sven was 60s when he took over England. Roy Hodgson, I still look at him now. And I always remember, you know, Don Howe, and he was a great mentor to me. I used to go watch him coaching at Newbury Town when I was at Oxford. Newbury Town, I thought the ex-Arsenal manager, England coach, so respected around us at Newbury Town coaching. I thought, wow, that is incredible. And the older I've got, more experienced. And I think, what are my strengths and what do I love doing? And I love the game. I love the game. I love the tactics of the game. I love the preparation for it, the build up to it, picking a team, hardest thing in the world. But, you know, I love that first half, buildings, half times, changing games, winning games, losing games, coming back from adversity. It seems to have been something which I've had in my life since I was a player, I suppose, but definitely a coach since I was 30, which is nearly 30 years. That's all I've known. And I do look at and using my experience and saying, well, and I always remember Sir Alex saying to me that in his mid-50s, you know, he was doing everything, doing all the coaching, his other coaches were redundant. And one of them nearly walked out on him. I think it was Archie Knox at Aberdeen, nearly walked out on him. He says, I do nothing. And he's got, let me do something. Oh, I'm going. And he let him do the coaching. He says it's the best thing he ever did, because he stood back and watched the players and noticed little things which he'd never noticed when he was in it. And I think I'm at that stage now where I've got to use my experience, because, you know, I would have been a better manager if I'd have known 20 years ago what I know now. And I still think I am now. And maybe, yes, I can't coach every day and at 100% every day. But like I used to say, I used to look at Sir Alex and say, you know what he does? Saturdays. He does Saturdays really, really well. He picks the team, he gives a team talk, watches the first half times are great, changes the game, subs are great, invariably he wins the game. That's his job. And that's football. The players on the field winning on a Saturday. And I still love that. So to be involved in that, I always want to be.
Brilliant, Steve. Absolutely outstanding. We'll take this last one. Darren Bowe, how close were you, Steve, to becoming the Hearts manager, and what stopped that happening? And that will be the last question of the night. Thank you, Darren.
No, I think pure speculation from journalists up in Scotland. But I got to say, you know, it's one of them leagues which I've always looked at, always admired, and I think it's getting bigger and growing. Hearts is a big club, and Rangers, Celtic. I think that league's growing and can get better. And I think, you know, this lockdown is a great opportunity for Scotland to take another step forward. In a crisis, it's an opportunity. I think Scottish football can take that.
Mm-hmm. Look, Steve, I just want to thank you so much indeed. You've been absolutely fabulous tonight. It's just been so engaging listening to you and the experiences that you have, and you know, you're just brutal honesty, Steve, is just a credit to you and the testimony that the man that you are. And I just want to, on behalf of us at Experience Epic, to thank you from my heart to coming on. It's been different class. Thank you so much indeed, and I wish you every success, and hopefully see you back in the dugout very soon.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
God bless you, Steve. That man. Thank you, man.
Cheers, Brian.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for tuning in to Steve McClaren, and very much grateful for Steve coming on tonight. As I said, you can still, by all means, bounce on to the link below and donate for the brave kids out in Africa at the minute, and who are going through South Africa for a day. Very difficult times at the minute with COVID-19 have presented. And I know the guys out there at charity base from Northern Ireland would certainly appreciate any sort of donation at all. So the link's just down below, and appreciate if you can in any way give some small donation. That's us for tonight, folks. We've got Paddy McCourt on Friday evening, former Celtic midfielder, the Derry Pelly. It's going to be interesting with Paddy, and we're certainly looking forward to that. Thank you so much indeed for joining us tonight. It's been fantastic. Thank you for your questions and your engagement. And I look forward to seeing you on Friday night. Take care. God bless.